Hey there, guys and gals. This is BL Blankenship, and I'm coming to you live again to talk about comics, talk about the Marvel situation, so on, so forth. If you watch me a lot, you know the deal. I'm waiting for this thing to kind of get to going on YouTube. Then I'm going to share it on my other stuff while I'm talking. So, hey, it is what it is, right? Um, I don't care though about the whole like waiting and getting going part. I'm just going to cut right into it. There's a lot of things that are going on in comics right now, right? It's a really big deal. Marvel Comics, after what, like 90 years in New York City, like a hub for the world, right? Huge place, a lot of people there, enormous population, is moving to Burbank, California, because it's now owned by the Disney Corporation. And you've got some people with an agenda that are wanting to call for the death of Marvel Publishing. So, what a lot of people are missing is that the place where they're going, Disney has publishing there. If you start looking at comic stuff, and I live here in like the Knoxville, Tennessee area, which is really a hot place for comics, right? But we don't have any publishers here. I mean, we have publishers here, but we don't have any big name publishers here. You'll have like a guy like me, like a couple dudes that are going ahead, doing their own thing, going to some stuff and all that, but you don't have like an IDW or an Oni Press or Boom Studios or anything like that here, even though business wise it makes sense to come to Tennessee, and that's why so many big businesses that have their stuff together start coming out like to Tennessee and Georgia and whatnot. In Atlanta you have like 5 different movie studios, right? And film and everything. They shoot Family Feud there. If you wanted to be on Family Feud, Steve Harvey and all that, you would go to Atlanta, Georgia for that. The Tyler Perry stuff, the BET network does things there. Netflix films things there. They're doing casting right now for the next Superman movie in Atlanta, whether it'll be done there or not. There's some involvement and everything. The state has poured stuff in to the businesses that have come there, to the point where Disney's like going to have to pay money and liable for leaving and going to Europe and abandoning the United States and the love of America. Good move. Uh, yeah, it's rough stuff. People do different businessy things, and I'm not like a total business guy or whatever. I just have some integrity and a gut feeling about things or whatnot. Oh man. Yeah, there's a lot of reasons I feel like, and you'll have people say, "Hey man, I got sources and all that." I was right about the Paramount thing. It was the thing that made sense with WB, with the Warner Brothers stuff. I could really go in to Warner Brothers and all of the horrible, horrible, horrible things that have been done through the history of it. Listened to a video yesterday, and there was this dude that was talking about how all these leaders, losers might be the better word, but leadership just could care less about the Looney Tunes line, and that is sick. That's disgusting. How they've had this, I mean, enormous properties, and they've just went ahead and they've dumped on Bugs Bunny and everything. Zaslav, of course, would be the latest, but I mean, it's went on and on and on all through the history of it. They've got a gold mine, maybe a platinum mine, and they don't care. So no, that's terrible. You look at the day the Earth blew up. By the way, that's one of the best movies, like animated movies or movies. That it's in like my top 20. It's so perfect. Everything plays off of like the Tex Avery type stuff. Look at HBO Max, all the Cartoon Network and stuff. It's an embarrassment, isn't it? I got on there. We pay for it. I got on there, and it's like, where are all like the Looney Tunes stuff and everything? Like all the older cartoons. It's so sparse on cartoons. If you really had a Cartoon Network, and you know what Cartoon Network used to be, you would have Hanna-Barbera, and you would have Warner Brothers, and you would have DePatie Freeling. You would have those things on the Cartoon Network, everything, so people could watch. Netflix does a lot of things wrong. I mean, abysmally, cataclysmically. If it destroyed the people's lives that were the shot callers and everything, well, sorry for the people that are the underlings working there, but if it destroyed their lives, the decisions are so bad, that would totally make sense. but at the same time, they do a lot of things right. They have a lot of shows. Not talking about the quality. They have a lot of shows. Some of the shows that they have do have quality, like the Cowboy Bebop thing, which I was all on board with, like the Castlevania thing that had come out. There are things that they do that are superbly well, whether the majority of people think it or not. That Cowboy Bebop thing, if you don't like the live action Cowboy Bebop, then I highly question whether you truly like Cowboy Bebop, because it felt like Cowboy Bebop, it looks like Cowboy Bebop, it sounded like Cowboy Bebop, it acted like Cowboy Bebop, the music was like Cowboy Bebop. Everything that was in that show was like a love letter to Cowboy Bebop, right? Anything that mattered in it was there. Even Ed, when Ed came out, and then people were like, "Ed is too much like Ed. You're stupid." It was perfect. I was so excited for the second season, and then they're like, "Whoop, nah, we're canceling it." They reenacted some of my favorite episodes from the anime. They went ahead and they put some new stuff in that blended and worked for the show, that felt like a part of that. So Cowboy Bebop, I am a defender of that. The Rurouni Kenshin live action movies are absolutely outstanding. So there have been multiple. I don't really want to go on like praising Netflix, but I'm just saying that everything that they do isn't wrong. In fact, some of it they knock it out of the park so much it shows you what they could be. If they were to put that same kind of love in like Narnia instead of like wrecking it, I mean, they would just be like the hottest thing that they're. I mean, you just be like, wow. You would think that it's not some crap that they're saying. We want a Christian audience, but we're going to do things to Narnia and Little House on the Prairie and stuff like that. The very shows that you absolutely wouldn't do that to. There's other things where you can do whatever you want to or whatever. There's certain properties, certain IPs that are like so pure and wholesome and that you just really need to stick to the source material or whatever for. But no, man, there's all this stuff that's going on. It's not weird at all that Marvel is going to California. It's sad for New York City, and I don't think that necessarily the mayor and the enormous amounts of garbage that are going on there have anything necessarily to do with this. It's a different landscape than it used to be. Artists and writers that you have are all over the world. When you do like any kind of comic stuff, publishers that you have, I think in the '90s that wasn't as weird. Even I think that it was kind of getting there to where people didn't necessarily have to like drive in or whatever to work, but the rise of the computer and the technology, and it's just become so much more that it's like normal. It wouldn't be weird if I was working with people from Japan and everything. I've worked with people from South America. I've worked with people from Italy. I've worked with people from Egypt. I've worked with people over in like France and England and Germany and all those types of places that I'll just, for the American audience, that I would say you'd imagine people yodeling, those countries, mountain-esque and everything. So Western Europe, but like up north, all kinds of places around the world, Canada, what Barbados, I mean, it doesn't really make a difference. I can call them on WhatsApp and we could talk. We could get in a computer conversation or whatever. So yeah, there's certainly publishing in California. I was recently in Florida State, not too recently, but back in February. So towards the first of this year, my wife and I were celebrating our anniversary, and I wanted to go and visit a specific church, Jennifer LeClaire, and she's in Davie, Florida. That's just by like Fort Lauderdale and Miami. It's where the Miami Dolphins do their training stuff and all that. It's pretty. It's like more suburban type area. But so during all that stuff, I'm like, let me see what all comic things they've got in Florida, because when I'm into something, that I'm writing comics. Things are going really well. If you were to say like productivity wise, like how much stuff I'm putting out, running circles around most indie comic creators that way. I'm not saying sales wise. I'm saying about the bulk of things that I put out. There's certainly some other people that are up in those ranks. and all that. But I mean, you're not saying that I equate to like one, whatever, 2 books a year. By 2028, I will have had 20 or more comics. I started in 2024. So while some of this is slowly building, and then it's going to be like, because it's like patience and it's hitting with precision or trying to, I would average like 5 comics a year. So I mean, there's some people that are doing that, and some that aren't. I'm just saying, if you were to do the math or whatever, it would be more like that. Uh, yeah, and you're talking about 30 page, like 48 page, comics each. So I'm not saying graphic novels necessarily. There could be more. I've written a few graphic novels and everything. I'm just talking about what will be published there. If I have direct and total control, basically over stuff, it gets done. And if I don't, I can't really guarantee things, but I have written more stuff. So it is what it is. I'm happy to work with other people, talk with other people about working for stuff, just kind of fill it out and be like, am I feeling this? How big of a hassle is this? The more that I'm putting into something, the more I kind of expect to get out of it. But if it's just like fun and light and easy, I'm just, I'm chill with that. If it's like, man, I like your art, I might just sit around and do that because I can. Last night, this is diverging from the Marvel thing and talking about me writing comics. Last night, and I thought about doing this before. It's been 2 years since I've been to iShook as I'm their editor-in-chief. That's not been for the whole 2 years, the majority of it. But doing what I can there, and that would vary depending on who and where I was working with, and what I'm enabled to do, and whatnot. But there's been a lot. My first comic that I ever made and put out had to be pulled within like a month, and the people, they were great. They were super nice. I liked them a lot. I have zero bad things to say to them. It's their property. I read some false information online. I felt like I could utilize Zorro and write a story and do whatever I wanted in it, and I did. And I think it's great. And there's other people that have voiced to me that think that it's great. The problem is that the ones that hold the trademark Zorro Inc. did not want an R-rated Zorro. That was exactly what they stated that their issue was. They did not want an R-rated Zorro. Essentially putting me on Zorro in some sense, maybe not like the pomp of it all, is like putting Todd McFarlane on Spider-Man or putting Frank Miller on Batman. And for those of y'all that know those stories, they really amped up the horror and the violence to those stories. Were they definitively better stories? A lot of people are going to say yes, particularly on Frank Miller. I have heard people argue on both sides of the Todd McFarlane Spider-Man stuff, which I don't think anyone's ever argued that they look absolutely gorgeous. They just argued the story points and the competence in writing or not or whatever, but they look absolutely gorgeous. Why wouldn't you take the lizard and make him more savage? But that was good stuff. I'm all about the more violent, stuff in it. So, yeah, I had researched Zorro heavily. And moreover, I like grounded things, so like the realistic things about it, like the people that Zorro, the fictional character, was based off of, right? So, I'm gonna put a link into this when this video is like done and everything, where you can see this. But if you go over to ishookcomics.net, you will find my Zorro Kills #1, the canceled comic, where you can read it for free. Now, what is it? What are you saying, Bill? I'm saying that it's relegated to fan fiction, just like John Byrne's X-Men Elsewhere was relegated to fan fiction. But I just put it out there for some people's enjoyment, nothing else. If you are a comic book editor and you want to read that and be like, if we don't hire this man, I'm going to start beating people so badly they get hospitalized. I mean, you go ahead and you do that. I don't think anybody's that passionate about maybe if you not anybody that's working at Marvel or whatever. If they were that passionate that were working at Marvel, they would have took Scott Snyder up on some of the things that he was wanting to do with Marvel and be in a better place right now, instead of losing him to DC. But yeah. Anyway, yeah, you can read Zorro Kills #1. The context of the story, because again, I study like American history and all heavily. A lot of bad things in American history. A lot of bad things with Abraham Lincoln. Now, if you know anything like Jack about Abraham Lincoln, you know that he's boosted up so high that anyone with a functioning brain would say they've mythologized this guy. When I say they, I mean all political sides. I mean anybody that's a tyrant, and lifted this guy up that like said we're going to shut down what the government can do and I'm going to do anything that I want to do. The same dude that criticized the Mexican-American War did just as bad to his own people that were trying to secede from the United States. And people would say to you, they'd say, but BL, because you don't know history. They say, what about slavery and everything and the importance of that? And you're amplifying that way more than it is. The Emancipation Proclamation freed exactly 0 slaves. Read it, 0 slaves. Literally every place where the Union could have freed slaves, they didn't. So Robert E. Lee and Ulysses S. Grant, which one of them had a slave during the course of the American Civil War, which definitively was not a civil war? That makes you think it's propaganda anyway. A civil war would infer that the South wanted to take over Washington, D.C. and the country. So they were trying to secede. So just like the colonies, right? A bit later in time, but just like the colonies, there have been other countries that have seceded from other places. It wasn't Lee. Lee and his wife illegally taught slaves to read. You had some of these people that would say, we brought them over here and they've learned so much about culture and everything. It's helped them enrich their life. Not if you don't have them where they can read. Because then it's putting somebody in a place where they're oppressed, where they've got chains on, where they can't learn or can't be educated or whatever. So it's keeping somebody low. So yeah, Grant, he had a slave. Lee had set his slaves free. A lot of interesting things about Lee. Am I related to Lee? Kind of, but it's like some weird branches and twists and turns. But yeah, it's just not like a straight direct bloodline. He's like a third, what is it, or fourth cousin of a sixth or seventh great grandpa of mine, something like that. I had people that fought on both sides of the war. Only one died, and he died in a prison camp in Chicago from pneumonia. So that is a horrible, horrible death. It would have paid to be like shot on a battlefield or something, but no, die in a prison. All the American Civil War prisons were horrible, both on the northern and the southern side, and they could care less about the people in there and the torturous conditions. It was really bad. You could write multiple books on that. Multiple books have been written on that. Lincoln's wife's brother, that was a complete psychopath. Their whole family was, and so was she historically. He would torture the Southerners in there, like he'd burn them with hot irons and poke them with swords, and and all kinds of stuff like that. He was just a sadistic freak. She was having seances in the White House with Lincoln. That's how she got to be institutionalized after the death of their child. After they'd slaughtered all of these Americans, he was trying to colonize Liberia. It's a bunch of stuff. Anyway, so during this war, while the public school system, which is flawed or ghastly, historically the books are bad. You had the United States doing the Indian Wars, so killing Indians. Right now, there were some Southerners. Hang on, let me take a drink of tea. There were some Southerners that would be captured, and they would say, "We're gonna let you go if you fight for the Union, but we know you don't want to kill your own brothers, so you're going to kill the red man for the United States government." So there were some Southerners that were brought over into that. The rest of them were not. Okay. Let me hold on. Beep 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 beep. Back up. There were people in the South that also fought for the North, and there were some people in the North that joined up with the Confederacy. I do not at any point in time want to obscure that. You also had people in Australia and Canada and from a few other countries that went ahead and enlisted on one side or the other. That's historical truth. Okay. So, but you would get some of the Confederate people that they would say, you can go ahead and kill Indians for us out west. They were killing Indians. It's about conquering. That's what the war was about. It would have been a rival nation. It would have been like economically a rival nation. You had the agricultural in the South. You had the industrial in the North. By many, 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 many standards, the South could have, should have won. Jefferson Davis would not let his generals do what needed to be done to win the war. Otherwise, the South would have won many times over, particularly early on in the war. The Gettysburg thing was the turning point for the North and everything. Total bloodbath. But there would have been several times over. Lincoln, to the contrary, would have Grant, who was an inferior general. He used men as cannon fodder. And then Sherman, who was an excellent general on the northern side. He was like a barbarian, but he's like, this is what we're going to have to do to win. It's like a battle of attrition, right? So the northern invading armies went through, and he said, I will make Georgia howl, and burnt a lot of towns to the ground. The first person to die on their siege in Atlanta, firing cannon fire in it, was a black man that owned a barber shop. There's a lot of cool stuff in history about that. Like a cannonball went flying and like took off his leg, and he like died there in the sidewalk bleeding because of General Sherman. But no, there's some really neat stuff with that. Anyway, back to Zorro. So you've got all this persecution on the Indians. Good book to read, by the way, is Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. That is American history from a Native American perspective, and it just goes into all the grave, horrible stuff that went on there that you won't find in like normal, classroom history books. Great book. It's also on Audible. It's beautiful. It may make you cry. It's awesome. I've got some Cherokee background, even though it's emphatically stupid if you only care about like a race or gender or whatever, because you're there's something wrong with you if that's the case. But anyway, so going around slaughtering Indians, all kinds of bad things going on. There were greaser laws that had to do with greed. Greaser laws that applies to Mexicans, the conquered Mexican people, over in California and everything. That they're a bunch of greasy Mexicans. That was the inference. It meant that they had to have a curfew, and so that was so the white man could go in and get all the gold and everything, and they didn't have enough time to go and do stuff. It's so they could be robbed blind, right? So in the history, one of the dudes Zorro's based on, and let's say Zorro Inc. I know Marvel doesn't carry him anymore, but Dynamite, whichever place is like publishing Zorro, let's just say they give me the green light, BL Blankenship, to do anything that I want to do. So you've already got it's not an origin story comic, but you've already got Zorro kills one. He's stalking and hunting down child trafficking, people that want to do vile things to the children, working with slaves, whatever, Mexican, kids and all that. Let's talk about the origins of Zorro as BL Blankenship here would write that based on like the history and even like what I want to do, but it's totally based on the history of the dude that they based off of. So there was this. I'm not even going to go into rattling off names and everything. I'm just going to give you the long and a quick short, whatever of it. You got this dude that's a Mexican. He's got a brother. The brother's saved up. He's got like a stagecoach, a nice horse and everything. Some white guys see him with it. So they want to say because he's a Mexican that he went ahead and he stole that. This happened in real life to this dude that's based off Zorro that went vigilante, his brother. So they say this Mexican stole it. So they take it from him. They rob him, right? Later on, that dude that is to become Zorro, he's got himself a hot wife, and you've got these white pieces of trash, white trash, uh, that come in there, and they tie him to a chair, and they rape and kill his wife because they can, because they're, we're the United States of America and everything. Early bad American history things, giving Indians blankets with smallpox and so on and so forth. Yeah, the government really did that. And yet you trust the government, right? But okay, so all that stuff happens, and it breaks the dude, right? And so he goes into like vigilante mode. That's the Zorro that I want. The entire premise of wearing all black is so you can hide in the night and in the shadows, and that's when you would do vigilante type stuff, presumably under the cover of night, so you wouldn't be able to. We don't have like all this like cell phones and like cameras monitoring vehicles and all that. We're talking about like old times, right? And so he's under the cover of night, the veil of night, dressed in all black, and he goes in and he does whatever he has to do, whether it's vandalism, arson, assault, whether it's killing somebody, whatever the particular instance calls for that seems appropriate. That's what the Zorro that I would want to have does. I wrote a foreword and an afterword in this. You can read that first 24-page comic, first and probably very well last. I was enthused about it to write a second one. I'll just go ahead and say here that what the second one was, because I thought what you need is you need an event. So I've got a thing that's an introduction comic. You need an event thing. And then you have another story, and then you have an event, and then you have another story, and you have an event. And when I say an event, I don't mean like Secret Wars. I mean like Wolverine versus Hulk, Spider-Man versus Batman. That type of thing. Enough of something that has some flavor, that you've got a visiting cameo character, and you got something that's exciting for the people, gives them a reason to come back and everything, right? It's something that most comics, a lot of comics, I would make an amazing CCO, uh, that a lot of comics don't have and don't do, right? So you got him in the first one, and he's getting all these child trafficking people. Why? Because I thought I want a Zorro that kills people, even though people do die in Zorro. It's just not as Punisher, mean and Red Man ugly, but mine is. And I thought, but you can't just have him kill anybody, because like you're not gonna have somebody jaywalking. You know what I mean? Like some minor nothing infraction, and so he kills them. It's like it has to be something worthy of that. So I had a bunch of people trafficking kids, and some man's trying to take advantage of a little girl up in a bedroom, and Zorro castrates him in the middle of the street and says, if you bleed out, you bleed out. And that dude was going to be a recurring character, by the way. And in a perfect world where they're like, we love and adore you, we've hooked you up with this comic book place, you're just going to sit and endlessly write Zorro stuff and make a name for yourself that way. I mean, you're going to be like 50 issues deep in that, and people are going to be dancing around, and it's going to bring the comic book industry to a place that it's never been. It'll lift Zorro up to a thing that it's never seen in modern day. All that, yeah, that didn't happen. But yeah, so it's going to be Six Gun Gorilla and I wrote the script. I have the script. Six Gun Gorilla versus Zorro. Why? Because I wanted somebody that was physically imposing enough, and I also have their battle on a riverboat, with like the wheel on the back. And the reason is because I thought that would be cool. And so I have Zorro fight him, and I really think out choreography in my head, like a lot, like all the martial arts background, whatever stuff that I've going on. I really think all that stuff out a lot. So it's pretty detailed. How is Zorro gonna even like be able to touch a gorilla? BL. There's several instances where he will use his bullwhip, and what he'll do is he will like kind of jump and swing around like one of those like pedestal column things, on the riverboat. It's a very Spider-Man move. It's to build up momentum. You know, like kick off a wall and do that, and he's got this momentum built up, and then you'll like drop kick him that way, or stab his sword through him that way because of the impact and the momentum and everything. He would still have his machete that you get in the first one. That's a surprise, by the way. But I mean, again, you can read it. It's there for free. I cannot sell it. My Zorro has a machete that he has inside his what do you call it? Not shirt. That's not the right word. Not blouse either. Tunic. He has a machete in his tunic that he pulls out. Right. Well, he also has a dagger, and in this next one, which he is expert at throwing because he is, and he throws it into one of the gun barrels that Six Gun Gorilla has. Does Six Gun Gorilla use his big, revolvers in this BL? Not primarily, some, but not primarily. He uses a crank Gatling gun in some of it because that's just awesome that he's cranking, on the riverboat, like shooting walls to pieces, and the floor and all that, trying to hit Zorro. And then at some other point, and I don't know if most people know what this is or not, but you can look it up. Again, proportionately, I want you to think about a gorilla. A gorilla is like probably twice the size, like height wise, maybe as a person, maybe that and a half. Huge hands. I have big hands. I can palm a basketball. They're what are they? They're like 7.5, 7.75 inch, palm to fingertip, I think, hands of just, it's just whatever. A gorilla's hand's like twice as big as my hand. They've got like a 14, 16 inch, whatever hand from the palm to the fingertip on it. So they're different. A duck gun would look way smaller for a gorilla. A gorilla could hold a duck gun if they could fire a duck gun. They could hold a duck gun up. A duck gun is like, picture like a shotgun, because you have photos that like two people are holding, one person's kind of holding the barrel, and what it does is it fires this copious amount of duck shot so much that a what do you call ducks? It's not a gaggle or a herd or whatever you call them. Like the ducks that are flying in the V, like the whole flock of ducks, if it's flock, whatever. That boom, and it takes them all out. That's what a duck gun is. So I have him with a duck gun because I was like, what's another extreme? What are like the baddest guns that you could possibly give Six Gun Gorilla? The most overpowered that you can. So this isn't like a dude that Zorro is going to overpower. Where in the first one you have him totally Batman, right? So he's just whooping everybody. Nobody can hardly even like lay a finger on him. He's out sword fighting. He's out fighting. He's just tearing them up. He's an imposing force. He's going into this like Anakin Skywalker. You saw like the Star Wars trilogy, like the episodes 2 and 3, and I mean he's just like, and number 3, he's just like the baddest man on the planet. He's just cocky. He's just like barely dodging the sword over here, barely dodging it over there. Zorro's got all that going on. It's like, have a foe that he couldn't pull that kind of stuff on, that he has to outwit, that it's because he's smarter, that he's playing chess while other people are playing checkers. So it's like, what would he do and all that? Yes, at some point, Zorro does get a pistol from Six Gun Gorilla because my Zorro's awesome, and you have to feather them. They're the single action, and so he's bam, 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 bam. Doesn't kill the gorilla, but it wounds him. So he's getting pelted with the bullets from this 44, pelted with those bullets. I mean, he at some point gets like a sword stabbed through there that Zorro has to like kick and pull out, or he pulls it out, or I don't remember. I've written the script, and all that. Do they both survive? The short, I don't care to tell you. The short answer is yes. it's one of these things that, like Stan Lee, when he talked about, who was it, the Hulk versus Wolverine or who, and he was on like Comic Book Men, and he said, well, who do you think won? And people had different answers, and he said, exactly, it's one of these things. It's written that way, so they both survive. The Zorro and Six Gun Gorilla, they both survive. The boat doesn't. The boat's sinking, and he's on like an escape boat and needing medical attention, and the bad guys are just like, "Arr!" But it's one of those things to where it was like a nightmare face off. It was kind of a draw, but Zorro's wounded and hurt. Six Gun Gorilla's wounded and hurt. They both showed themselves to be absolutely formidable. He's going to like a convent monastery type place is where he's going and winding up, and the nuns think that he's hot. All women love Zorro. That's a trope. I never ever 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 show him out of his mask. I never ever ever talk about him as a real person. Actually, excuse me, I do show him out of his mask because he's kind of playing a part when he gets on the criminal boat thing. But I don't talk about what his real name is. In fact, he gets called by different names. He uses different aliases, all that kind of James Bond-esque. He's very much a proto-Batman, very much a proto-Punisher, kind of tied in with Batman type character. He's after these bad dudes. It gets talked about numerous times how there are multiple Zorros. I'm just talking about the Zorro world that you would have if BL Blankenship was over it, right? How there's numerous people being Zorro because he's in too many places, doing too many things, right? I laid out an outline. I don't think I wrote a full script. I laid out an outline for the third issue. And again, this was just me being ambitious, right? None of these have been drawn or anything like that. And there's a band of people, because I'm like, this is the direction you would want to go in, which is very manga esque, that are hunting the Zorros down, and that they've captured several of the Zorros, and he's going to come upon this fort where these Zorro hunters are, and they've got a few other Zorros, and they all have their like things. My Zorro's a Mexican. He's based on the dude from Fantasy Island that's Khan in Star Trek 2. What's his name? Is it Montalban or whatever? He's based on that dude because it's like you want a guy that's a Mexican that could play a white person. He's kind of like that way. And I'm like, it's like I don't want these girly men, these like bare chested men. You want some dude that's got like the chest hair, and he's got like a 5 o'clock shadow, and he's got this like alpha male kind of thing going on. He's like a brute. It's like that's the Zorro that I wanted. So he's like smooth, but and he can act like all nice and everything. But like Khan, like you saw him as Khan, where he's just whooping everybody. And I know he's like a genetically modified person. And that I like all the eugenics war stuff in Star Trek, by the way. I like that a lot. I wish more was done with that and like cinema and whatnot. But yeah, that's a thing that I like. But he's, where he's whooping everybody and everything. So anyway, and the third one, I was going to have different Zorros that he comes into contact with, and that they all have to team up and fight this fort of people. And they have different things going on with them. Like all of them aren't packing a machete, for example. That's only going on with the one that I have, but they've got like some different things. Like you'll have somebody that's more like a traditional, French or Spanish, like old world swordsman, and that they use 2 swords. So they've got like the longer, rapier sword, and I think my Zorro has like a I forget if I have him with a rapier or a saber. Either way, neither of those swords work in the decapitation of a person. As I looked into it, But I'm like, but a machete can. If you've got enough force and speed behind a machete, you can completely cut somebody's head off with it, which is why I have him packing a machete for the sake of decapitating people, severing limbs, whatever, as needed. That's not traditionally what he's like flailing around. So he's got a whip, he's got his sword, he has a machete tucked away, and then he also has like a double-edged boot knife that he like dagger that he can like throw, with the precision that he can lodge it in the barrel of a gun or in a person or in a gorilla or whatever. So yeah, he's got that. But no, that's about where I was going to take that. Very much a Django Unchained, the world is a terrible place kind of narrative. Seeing people doing all kinds of awful, atrocious stuff, and I would have him run in with like the worst of the worst. But no, you've the dude that was castrated in the middle of the streets and like left for dead. Part of his thing was that he was going to be a recurring character. His manhood had been stolen from him, like kind of literally in some sense. Not that he's much of a man wanting to do bad things to little girls, but he totally deserves what he got. Death would have been too good for him. He's going around trying to get revenge on Zorro, and people would ask him over and over again, "Is it true that you have no balls?" So that was going to be like kind of a shtick thing with this dude, this embittered guy that Zorro got the best of it, that lived to tell of it. I like the concept of having a few people that it's like you burn the village and you leave like one dude alive so they can talk about how bad the marauders were that like burnt down the village. I think that it's good to have some people that are like Zorro survivors that are like horribly scarred from it, that have lived to tell that he's like the Dread Pirate Roberts, more or less, of this, only the good guy, but that he's essentially that he's all that. I just thought that would be hip and cool. Nonetheless, it's not to be a thing. Zorro Inc. was absolutely beautiful to me, so nice and so kind. They hooked me up with like some literary people about writing some short stories, and I was really in a place in multiple places. I had been pastoring a church. I had a breakdown over it. I'm obsessed with results. I mean, we would go down to the hospitals and pray with people and all that. And there's a lot of people in this world the way that they are. If you would call them when they were sick, and you would be the person that was always there for them and all that, when the shoe would be on the other foot, you'd find out that a lot of people just don't care. Um, you know, you'll be in a small town and you will get a restaurant that is like New York City quality good. Just go with me. That's wow. That's amazing. That's like this. I mean, it's like the Ritz Carlton. I mean, this is the stuff for restaurants, right? But you'll have something like a McDonald's or a Burger King or a Dunkin' Donuts. Just some place where people can eat effectively cheap, but not as high of quality. And you'll have people go there to those places, and go for the low priced, chemical and, infused whatever, rather than the good place. And that's just really sad. And that's true of restaurants. That's true of churches. We were there for 7.5 years. The building had sat empty for like a year before that, a lot of stuff before that, multiple different people in leadership, all that. You're combating with history. History is a hard thing to combat with. So beyond bad, like internally, and the comic thing is way lighter and easier to write than the prose stuff. And so I had that going on. But the other conflicting thing is that I wrote a Zorro that I felt was so perfect that anything else just felt like less. And I get it. It's not my and I don't care. That's another thing that breeds into. I'd had a Josie Wells thing happen before this. I love the character Josie Wells, and I thought I want to honor this character and write a closing arc where he's an old man. And so I took concept from like Don't Breathe, like the movie, which I've not seen. My mom's just described it to me. I need to watch it. But it's like, what if you had this guy that he's this old man, but he's the baddest man on the planet, and you get these young punk kids that think that they're going to rob him. So it's a slow burn. That doesn't happen till about 75% of the book. But you've got this boy whose brother moves out to Texas. They're from Chicago, and he was interested with the American Civil War. Again, not the best name for it. Just go with it, though. And he was studying all that, and he thought that Josie Wells, who I had to change his name to Jody Walls. I'm just telling you the way the story was going. That he was just amazing, this outlaw and all this type of stuff. And the only thing that I changed in these books was Josie Wells to Jody Walls, but the story is the same. That he went with Quantrell's Raiders. Anything that goes on in the two novels that would have been canon to that. There would be some point where he would rob banks and everything. That's not weird, but that's also something that's talked about in the novels. And so I thought, let me write this thing where he's this old man. And so this poor boy gets pulled in by these hoodlums to go and rob this guy. And they break in, and he's got a little Shih Tzu dog. Why a little Shih Tzu dog? Because it's not a dog that you would justifiably have to kill for your own safety. It's a little frou-frou dog. And one of the boys kills it pretty brutally. He shoots it twice and beats it. And the reason why, as a writer, I do that is so that you will hate them and want Josie Wells to kill these young teenagers, and say, that was totally justifiable. They killed this little Shih Tzu dog. I would kill them too. So that's what happens in it. Great story. There's some people that are like, man, that's my favorite story that you wrote. Again, in a perfect world, let me tell you what would happen. Warner Brothers, whoever, would pick that up, say, we want to put the people that have rights to it, just give me a cut. We're going to promote this thing. We're going to help you. We're going to make this into a bigger thing. It would be blowing up internationally. There would be a movie based on it. They would throw some money at me, say, thank you, keep writing Josie Wells stuff. We like you that much. Because, of course, I had it in my head that I was going to write a thing about the outlaw years to where he's robbing banks and everything. And then I could have somebody like betray him that was supposed to be a friend that was another person that had been with like Quantrell's Raiders or whatever. I was going to do all that stuff. But then, break my heart, and I had to change it. Now, sales immediately were like, they were coming up. It was going to do something. And then it was like, bam, I got smacked down. And as soon as I changed the name, nobody cared. And so when Zorro Inc. is like, well, yeah, but if you can change these pages and not have him carving a Z and maybe change the way that he looks, do a little bit something with the art, that'll be fine. Let me tell you the reality of this. So I'd spent about $1,200, I think it was $1,200, creating this 24-page, yes, IDW, you should hire me, as an editor. If you're listening to this, comic book companies, it's like, how does, whatever. Anyway, I spent this money on it, and it's like, so what? Spend a bunch more money on it to something that doesn't have brand recognition and all that I'm going to lose that much, that I'm going to be that much further in the red. It makes more sense to eat it. It makes more sense to put it out for free, to hand it out to people for free, to put it on the internet at whatever point in time, which is now, for free, for people to read, for advertisement stuff. There's a word for that. Fan fiction. It's an ugly word, isn't it? Fan fiction. I know that John Byrne, but it's because he's John Byrne, because he has an established name. Just like Frank Miller, had an established name at whatever point. That their names mean something. So, John Byrne, he's did this X-Men Elsewhere, and people are like, wow, and all that. But that's him just sitting and doing all that. As a writer, would I care to sit around and keep writing stuff like this? I wouldn't care. But I don't know any artists that just want to sit and be like, I'm just going to do this for kicks and write stuff. I feel like I don't know, superior Zorro is what I'm saying. It's more of my flavor of a Zorro thing. I think that there's a lot of great, fantastic Zorro stuff, and I really appreciate it and like the model. But yeah, and Frank Miller, by the way, props, because he's the one that tied Zorro in with Batman, so that's why you're getting the proto Batman too, and that stuff. But I mean, that was my thoughts for Zorro, and really what I like. So he wouldn't be like killing somebody necessarily in every single thing, but he is the baddest man on the planet, and he doesn't take garbage off of anybody, and that's what you would have with the Zorro kills thing, and it would also be shown that there are other um, Zorros. You do find that his horse is named Tornado, and the first one, which Zorro's horse is named Tornado, is Tornado, you know, tomato. But it's again, if Zorro is well known, then people probably would know of the horse's name too. So someone else could easily adapt that. But yeah, that's what that is. Marvel, I think that they're alive and well. Are there any other comics that I may be putting out for free that I've done? Maybe. The comic that I had that was before this, because this was my first full-length comic book that I had put out before this, was a short that I had created for an anthology. And this is a thing that I hate, by the way, in literature, and probably in comics as well, totally in comics as well, and in all those mediums. What do they call it? There's an open submission. Do you know what an open submission means? An open submission means that everybody and their cousin is going to flood them with so much stuff that they're going to say we were completely overwhelmed with the stuff, and we got so many things that were good that absolutely 100% verifiably should not have been rejected, but we had to reject a bunch of them anyway because we couldn't print it all. That's what's going to happen when you have an open submission. So if you're saying we're having an open submission for something, you're insane. What you need to do is you need to find creators that you like, that do a sufficient job, that or this is my take on it. You can do you, and you green light them. That's what I do. Absolutely, green light them. That's the way that I worked with other people. Why? Because that's the way that I would want to be treated. Um, Say, BL, we are green lighting you to do this thing, which Zorro Inc., by the way, did. I'm just, yeah, again, it just wasn't working for me. We're green lighting you to do this thing. Here are the boundaries that you have to do in. If you want to do it, do it. And yeah, that's all that there is to it. But yeah, there's a lot of people that have an agenda and they're going after Marvel. I think that it's sad. Realistically, if Marvel and mainstream comics burnt to the ground, which if Marvel and DC burnt to the ground, mainstream comics have burnt to the ground. Let's not pretend that it's otherwise. I know you've got Image and Skybound and stuff, but just they're carrying so much of it, it would shut down everything. Okay, um, if they burnt to the ground, it's like anything else. Say you're a smoker, right? You smoke cigarettes, the tobacco, all that stuff. There's all this garbage that they pour into it, more nicotine and all that. I get my nicotine from fried potatoes. But let's say that you stop smoking cigarettes, right? You really didn't just like stop smoking cigarettes. You replaced it with something else. It's like anything, right? You don't quit, you know, doing this thing. You replace it with something else, whether that thing is better, whether that thing is worse, whether that thing is a new kind of evil, whatever. You take the one thing and you fill that void with something else. If Marvel and DC were to go down, the problem that you have is what are the alternatives? Um, there's a lot to that. I want to see them heal. I want to see them do better. I feel like as someone that's been in leadership, that is like a virtuoso, whatever, in writing, come up with your own opinion. I don't care. That the way to do anything like this right is that you have to keep some people that are recognizable, but that you mix it up a little bit and you throw some new blood in here and there and yonder. I would love to be able to like pitch to Marvel, for them to contact me. Editors, notably, I'm saying this across the board, editors, notably, are widely condemned and even hated with a visceral hatred by people across the comic book industry for not answering people, right? Really and truly, I don't know that they would have time. I have no idea how many emails like CB Cebulski gets. Have I written CB Cebulski? Absolutely yes. I have no idea how many emails CB Cebulski gets from people that are not a big deal, like me. People that are, I mean, if Marvel's rejecting Scott Snyder, Marvel sure is going to reject BL Blankenship, or one would think, even though the benefit that you would have is that, I would work astronomically cheaper and you could probably take advantage of me, and it would be worth sticking a feather in my cap, and you would have that at least for a while. Where Scott Snyder, he has his different pluses, and I have my different pluses. If I write the absolute supreme best comics ever penned, okay, how long is it going to take that to catch on? That's the issue that you would have. If I could sit down, and if Disney is just, thank you Jesus, just having like Holy Ghost revival all over Disney, because they're making so much money off, or could, off of comics or whatever, that I'm writing the stuff that is the highest level thing that's ever been written. I know that's a stretch. I'm just saying, if it was, because that's probably not the case. They're probably going to be good, but not the best, right? How long would it take for that to catch on when I don't have a name and that people are just going to show up because I'm the cool guy in the room? I'm the talented guy in the room that they've not heard of. So how long is it going to take? They're going to have certain artists involved. They're going to have certain marketing involved. It's going to have to be a character that people even care about, that they have put themselves out on the line to try me on. And and all that. And then I wonder if they think, would we be creating a monster like we did? Yeah, and I'm not saying with me even, but anybody, look at what Marvel did for different people, or DC even did for different people, right? And then it's like, see ya. After they make a big name, or we want this obscene amount of money, or whatever, fair is fair and good's good. And that goes into a lot of stuff that I'm really not qualified to talk about in depth, so I won't. But those are the realities of it. Yeah, I could write them some stuff that I genuinely feel like would make them substantially more money than some of their stuff is making. But I mean, is the proof in the pudding, and how long would it take for that to catch on? I started writing comics in 2024. By 2028, I will have like 20 or maybe slightly more, unless something happens, comics that come out. Whatever happens with those comics, as big or small as they are, will happen with those. So there's only like 4 that you can get like right now from me on Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes & Noble, all that, where you can go ahead and get those. There's another that you can get through Dave Dinsmore, the artist of Star Creep #1, because I told him, I said, you know what, dude? I said, you can go ahead and you can print this. I'm that chill, by the way. How much did he pay you to do that? Pay me to do that. First off, Dave's did a lot of work for me. He's been really good to me, and he's is a true friend, and I love him. Secondly, I paid an artist to do the cover for that, and have not got like 1 red cent out of Star Creep, and I'm fine. I think that it would be amazing, turned into like an Adult Swim show. That's really what Star Creep is suited for. It's an outer space parody completely, but 100% Adult Swim show. That's what they need to do, and they need to get me and Dave Dinsmore on staff, and let him be like an art director or whatever, and let me be a writer or whatever for that show, and involved in that, in the story process and everything, and do that, and pay us some money for that type of thing, yeah, I'd be all about that. But no, that's all that you can get right now. The other stuff is beginning to publish in November of this year, 2026, and Hellfire is what that'll be, and it will continue to publish through April. Do I have more comics? Yeah, there's a Star Creep #2, which is also a Dave Dinsmore thing that he just has to finish creating. I've got some shorts for some stuff. I've got Whitechapel #1 that I have to do the lettering for and have someone color. I've got 3 other comics that I'm working with someone that are in the horror realm. I'm doing the writing on those, and the artist is amazing, and he used to work with Gladstone and has worked on several Disney properties. Talented people are drawn to me. So yeah, there's some happening stuff. I will be at a bunch of different Comic Cons in 2027. Heroes Con, MegaCon, Baltimore Comic Con, quite possibly New York Comic Con. So I'll be hitting up the East Coast. Would like C2E2 be able to get me, or what? Yes, yeah, they could. You could get me pretty easily if anybody makes any kind of accommodations at all. Like that. That's just completely drivable. I like live in the Knoxville area. For that, would you be driving 13 hours to New York City to do that? I believe it is 13. I think it's 13 or 14. To do New York, 100%. Yeah, I'd totally do that for my friend Benny Arechmanoff, the CEO of I Shook Comics, which I am the editor in chief at. I celebrated 2 years in I Shook Comics. Yeah, I believe I've already said that. But no, I'd completely be down with that. But no, those are my thoughts on the Zorro stuff and everything. I could go through and really build up like some illustrious pitches for what I would do if Marvel brought me on, what I would do if DC Comics brought me on, and all that. But it's not really worth it unless they're going to give me the time of day to do that. I just don't want to talk to hear myself talk. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have, give it the thumbs up, like it, bell, parentheses, whatever, all kinds of stuff like that. I think that it's absolutely awful that you've got people pushing different kinds of narratives with an agenda against like Marvel Comics and so on and so forth. Has Fandom Pulse been right about some things to whatever degree? 100% sure, yeah, but maybe Marvel's given them enough rope to hang themselves and everything. I don't see Marvel going out anytime soon. There are publishers in California. They've not abandoned all publishing, and in fact, what they're doing is they're bringing it more together. They're doing the thing that these haters complain that they don't do. Marvel is doing property alignment, for better or for worse. Their movies, their TV shows, and their comics are going to be on the same page. That will be helpful or that will be hurtful. Only time will tell. Am I a fan of that? I'm 100% a fan of that. But I mean, I don't know. I feel like the one has to feed the other. The comics came first. And you've got an audience for that. You got to say, who is that audience and how big is that audience and how much does that audience spend, as opposed to people that'll like buy the t-shirt but they don't even listen to the band. That'll watch the movie but they don't even listen. You really want there to be crossover. Is what you want, instead of chasing an audience that isn't there. But part of that, this is the paradox to that crossover, is that you want the comics and the movies and the TV shows in any which way to line up one with another, so people that like the one will like the other. Bad decisions have been made, notably bad decisions, undeniably bad decisions that all of history and mankind and the whole universe agrees on. What's made the most money with Marvel in the theater? Deadpool has made the most money for Marvel, right? So what Marvel Studios or Marvel Entertainment, the Marvel Collective went ahead and did is they said, we're making so much money. The entire world is screaming, give us more Deadpool, give us more Deadpool, give us more Deadpool. This is what the people want. There's other things, but this is what the people want. So what does Marvel do? They say, we're going to take this obscene amount of money that we've made off of Deadpool, and we're going to make a bunch of movies that not that many people want to watch. PlayStation, their biggest thing was Minecraft. And they're like, we're making this obscene amount of money off of Minecraft. So we're going to take this money from Minecraft, and then we're going to make a bunch of games that people just don't want to play, that they don't care about. That's really bad stuff. What you need to do is you need to maintain, and you need to keep the Deadpool thing going. You need to milk that cow as long as you can milk that cow. You need to keep the Deadpool thing going and have some other stuff going too, and try to elevate that too, but don't turn off the spigot with the Deadpool stuff. Really. What, Peacemaker gets a series from DC, but Marvel doesn't give Deadpool a series? That's insane. I don't know if you could do it in a series. I mean, maybe you could. It would be some good writing or whatever. Maybe you could have a story arc that was good, that was fun, and have it going for a series. Maybe you could do that. Maybe you could have cranked out like a few more Deadpool specials. Maybe you could have Deadpool make a cameo and stuff, whether it's a direct thing or whether it's not. Maybe like a wanted poster in the background or whatever, but you just keep feeding that thing. Put him in your games. He's in the games. People like him in the games. All that kind of stuff. You need to look at what's going. So what's going to happen with my Hellfire series is this, okay? It's either going to make enough money to substantiate a second season or it's not. And what I mean when I say make enough money to substantiate a second season, I don't mean that I'm making 1 red cent. I don't mean that I'm making my money back on what I spent for the first season. I mean that it's making enough money to where I have 0 debt, paying the artists, the publishers, these people, and then I would just look to make the money on the back end for that. That's what I'm looking at. I'm that kind of person. I'm an activist kind of person. Hun, I'm podcasting. Oh, okay. Hey, anyway, the time. I'm not watching the clock, even though I question the timing. But I'm gonna have to cut out here and have to go. I'm headed out with my family. I'm gonna eat some good steak and everything. Yeah, we're going to one of them nice restaurants. I need to dress up a little bit more, but yeah, having a good lunch. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the comic stuff. That's all that we have time for. That's all you're gonna get. The timing's actually really good because it's an hour and 7 minutes in. I'm not really watching the clock or paying attention. I don't care. If you've enjoyed this video, you can clip it all to pieces. Do with it what you want. I'm looking for good things out of Marvel. Hoping. Really enjoying DC. I'm more of a DC person in many senses, but that could be turned around pretty easy because I could do some pretty things with Marvel Comics if they would give me the opportunity. If any one of your editors wants to call me, them or whoever, I will give you like 3 pitches. I'm not saying like 3 X-Men or whatever. In fact, I wouldn't look at being on a team book so much. I could do one, but I would prefer like an individual character like Ghost Rider or something, as opposed to that, and really up something there. But yeah, I could do something with X-Men. You need somebody with a name on X-Men to write the X-Men, because I think that it is what it is. If I were to write like a one-off or a limited something for X-Men, that's not going to do it for people because they would say, yeah, but it's not the main continuity. So you have to have somebody locked in that you're saying that this is going to be a continuous series. Support it. That's what you need. I'd need a little bit of a boost before you'd want to consider me doing something like that. If it's Spider-Man, and I know people don't want to hear this, and there's some people that there's something wrong. This Mary Jane garbage and everything with Spider-Man. I know there's somebody at Marvel that thinks that it's great at Marvel Comics. Look at me. Everybody hates you. You should be fired and thrown in a ditch, or just not touching that property. Work on something else. There's several ways that it could be handled. You could kill Mary Jane. You could put Peter Parker and Mary Jane together. This stuff that's going on with Mary Jane and everything, it's not good. It's pure absolute trash, and that's why your books aren't selling. Whoever's making these decisions, everyone hates you. I'm amazed that some psycho hasn't did real world physical violence to you. I know that it's been going on for a while. I know that there's a lot of names of people that I don't think that the fault is so much with Joe Quesada breaking them up, because here's the reality of this, okay? And there were other people involved. Anybody would think, well, they're going to get back together. They're going to resolve this. This is just going to be a hurdle to overcome. They're not going to have this going on forever and a day. I think that would be the prevailing opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. That's not what happened. Okay, I'm out. Got it. I've got to go. The wife beckons. Bye bye.